Good morning and welcome to today's DrayTek presentation, a DrayTek webinar called The Complete DrayTek Proposition in 45 Minutes, and also how to apply this after lockdown. What we try to do is wrap our product set around the sort of challenges that we're all facing in this kind of lockdown world and probably beyond that as well from an individual and also business perspective. So I'm Julian Hubble, I head up sales and marketing for DrayTek UK and Ireland. And it's my pleasure to introduce and run this webinar today. Today's Tuesday, July the 7th. So by way of introduction, some of you will have been on our webinars previously. They tend to be quite technically oriented. But just to say, the webinar today is more of a sort of propositional benefits type webinar. It's designed for customers or potential customers, resellers and potential resellers that may want to engage with this technology. And what we try to do is showcase the sort of network challenges that are associated with this kind of working from home lockdown environment that's creating new challenges for businesses and actually in some ways magnifying some of the issues that were apparent to start with. So we're going to look at how we can help people working from home with social distancing and relating to the company, how we can help a business manage a dispersed workforce that might be working from home or maybe working remotely in some way. And we're going to be looking at positioning and benefits of that. So this is the only corporate slide I do promise you, but for those of you that don't know who we are, we're based in Taiwan, been going for a few years. And one of the things that makes us special is that we own our own intellectual property on our hardware, design, operating system and firmware. It basically means that the whole design and manufacturing process is owned by DrayTek. This means that we can bring a really good, reliable product to market, and it also means we can be very responsive to market demands. One of the interesting things about us is that UK is the largest worldwide region for DrayTek. So this means that we tend to punch a little bit above our weight. So if there are features or products that particularly relate to our market, we tend to get it. Now, the key thing of what makes us special is all our support is UK based. So whether you're a customer at home or a business or one of our dealers, you get free UK based support. I think there are 9 individuals now in our support centre in North London that they're there to respond to any pre-sales or post-sales questions. So you can be confident that you get a good response. I think our average wait times is between 2 and 3 minutes now. So you will be getting through to somebody very quickly if you do ring that number. And just to reiterate, we've been going many years. We were founded in 1996, and we're the sort of UK operation. So a few numbers there that might interest you. We've got a few million products in circulation now, tens of thousands of companies using DrayTek products. We're especially well known for in the sort of SME, small to medium-sized enterprise space. Our product sets tend to suit small offices, and they could be a small business. Increasingly, homes that are looking for a little bit more from their network are starting to embrace our technology, and also very, very large organizations which have got a lot of small offices. So if you walk down the high street, for example, you'll see many DrayTek customers there. And there's me picking up the PC Pro Excellence Award 2019 for the best router brand, something we won, I think, 10 times out of the last 12 years, which we're very, very proud of. So you're in good company if you're buying DrayTek products. We've got an excellent pedigree, and hopefully that goes in some way to support that. So today's agenda is really the following. So we're going to first of all start talking about the challenges of getting a reliable and continuous broadband service for both the home and business. And we're going to be talking about some of the DrayTek router range when we talk about those types of challenges. We're then going to sort of move on to the Wi-Fi challenge that many of us face. How do we get reliable Wi-Fi? How do we get it in every nook and cranny of the house and potentially outdoors? I know it can be challenging for many individuals and businesses, and we'll show you some neat ways of addressing that. Also, where does wired fit? Where does it make sense to cable something up as opposed to Wi-Fi? Wi-Fi is great for certain situations, but you can often find a simple wire can be the best solution, and we'll cover that as well. Then we talk about head office and remote management. How do you manage the dispersed workforce? Lots of people working from home, lots of remote sites. How do you do this between 2 and tens of thousands of devices for us all? So we will talk about the big head office. We'll also talk about how somebody at home that maybe just got a couple of devices to manage can benefit from our remote management solutions. So that in a nutshell is our agenda. So let's now move straight on to the challenges from kind of working from home and what this kind of means for broadband access. So key thing that we sort of emphasize here is that everybody's now on the internet, as we all kind of know. And what's happened as a result of the lockdown is we've now got many more people working from home, and this is putting a big bottleneck on the connection to the internet. So home workers need high speed and uninterrupted access. I'm one of those home workers now. I need that high speed uninterrupted access. I can't have something interfering with this particular broadcast, or I'm not going to be able to complete this webinar very well. The students need access to tutorials. Everybody's on social media, and of course we all know Netflix, Prime, Sky, whatever is now traditionally done over internet services. So essentially, you're going to need an internet connection for all these types of things. And the challenge doesn't really change in an office. We're all on the net in the office. Apps are now in the cloud, whether it's 365 or Google Apps. E-commerce, critical part of what we do. Many organizations will take orders from their customers across the internet. CRM, ERP, all moving on to cloud-based systems, and things like new applications like phone systems, collaborative tools like Teams and Zoom and so on are now IP-based and internet dependent. So if you add to that the kind of classic lockdown challenges where connection can be unpredictable to homes. Sometimes individuals can be in low or no coverage areas, and we're all sort of challenged with sharing internet bandwidth. It can be quite a challenge to get this right consistently. And of course, what happens when the internet fails? You may recognize some of these people. You've got a big disaster there, whether it's people can't work or some critical things gone down, or maybe the family can't connect with the internet. This is a fairly major problem. So the first thing we're going to do is talk about a flagship feature in a flagship product. So the product is called the Viga 2862 series. We'll be covering this a little bit more detail as we go through the presentation today. And we're going to first of all introduce a flagship feature, which we call broadband failover up to 4G. Very simply put, if you have the right type of router, and we'll explain that later on, you can simply put a SIM card right into the back of the router. And once the SIM box card is in the back of the router, it's now ready, waiting for a main internet connection failure to occur. So here we have sort of denoted by the green dot going from right and then sort of coming back from the left. You can see that you've got the depiction of an internet connection working very successfully. And then suddenly you get some sort of connection failure. So it could be proverbial person digging up the road. It could be some loss of service on the internet somewhere. That can happen from time to time. We all know these tend to happen at the worst possible moment. Touch wood as I say that, hopefully not now, but these things can happen. If that does happen in this particular type of configuration, because you've got that 4G SIM card in place, the router will then automatically go across to failover mode. So this uses a different wide area network port to force that 4G connection when the main connection fails. So this is a nanosecond delay while it flips across. Most of you won't even notice that this flip-over has taken place, and then you can successfully connect to the internet while the main connection is down. When the connection comes back up again, the router will identify that. It will stop that 4G connection, and everything is now redirected over the main broadband connection. So a really, really good automated solution for that broadband failure type environment. So for those of you using a router that does this, obviously that's a fantastic solution. But some may not necessarily have that. So what can we do to help organisations or individuals where this occurs, where there isn't a 4G option available? Well, there's a really, really neat solution here where you've got a friendly next door neighbour. So you can hitch a ride with the next door neighbour, or maybe with a business next door. We know many of our resellers sell to organisations that may be on the same trading estate. We know they have set up collaborative agreements, and you can do this with the next door neighbour as well. If my internet network fails, maybe I can use the next door neighbour, and kind of vice versa. So well, obviously, word of warning, permissions are required. You can't just do it. You've got to have the login passwords to do this, kind of goes without saying. But in this type of scenario here, you get the same internet connection failure, and you can piggyback using this wireless WAN capability to the next door neighbor's WAN connection. So essentially, you're passing your WAN connection over the wireless network that's inherent in your router and piggybacking on with the next door neighbors. Really, really neat solution there. And just to take this a step further, you can also use this with the hotspot capability on most mobile phones. So invoke mobile hotspot, connect your wireless router feature to the wireless hotspot, and you've got continuous internet access. So there we are. There's three really good, simple ideas that can keep you connected even when the main connection fails. So that's the flagship feature, but many of you will know there's much more that you can do with a DrayTek router. I'm just going to kind of feature some of those key benefits now. So the first thing is what we call traffic prioritization. Sometimes we call that quality of service, and this is really all about giving bandwidth to critical traffic. And I think we all know the scenario, don't we? There's peaks and troughs of usage, particularly at home. There's lots of individuals competing for bandwidth. Some of it's really critical, some of it's not quite so critical. Some is very, very time sensitive, like voice over IP, for example, and some of it not. So when you're working in this kind of lockdown, post-lockdown environment with lots of people competing for bandwidth, it's really important to segment the traffic. So the important traffic gets the priority. And I've got kind of three different options here that might be relevant here. So the first thing you can do is you can segment traffic by the type of traffic. So for example, voice over IP, or maybe collaborative tools like Zoom or Teams, you can make sure that if any type of call from whatever individual is that type of traffic, that gets automatic prioritization of bandwidth. So you'll have a nice clean VoIP connection or a really good effective Teams or Zoom meeting. You can also segment by the type of user. So it may well be that you want the adults or the students in the family, as opposed to the rest, to have prioritized connection to the internet. You do this by using a facility called VLAN, which I'm going to cover a little bit later on. But essentially you can say any user of this particular category will get the higher bandwidth than someone that's not on that high category. And the third option is where you can sort of segment by time of day. We know this is particularly useful for families where you may want adults or the workers to have that prioritization during the day, but when the evening comes, you may want it to be a bit more of a free-for-all. So within the firewall, you can set the segmentation up to be segmented at certain specific times of the day. So there's actually quite a lot to this particular feature. I've just really touched the surface, but you can see here how you can segment the traffic and make sure that the right traffic or the right user gets the priority. So just moving on to some of the other business class features, VPN, virtual private networking. Virtual private networking is another standout feature of a DrayTek solution set. There's different ways in which you can do that. There's a free downloadable smart VPN client that someone can download to their laptop or device. Using that, you can then create an encrypted connection back to head office. So this is ideal for one single user that may want that secure connection. We have another stage to this, which is a kind of router to router or LAN to LAN connection, where you may have a location where multiple devices or multiple users may need this secure internet connection. So for example, it could be that there is an individual that's working from home, but they've also got a voice over IP phone that may all need to be encrypted. In that particular situation, you can use a device-to-device VPN solution. So we got the concept of the remote user using a single connection, and you've got the concept of a remote location that's got that connection through to the central site. And then the final sort of piece in the jigsaw, if you like, is the head office solution. So for those of you owning large businesses or selling into large businesses, you may have lots and lots of remote workers now with this kind of lockdown environment, with people now focusing on home working. You may need to up the stamp of the concentrator in the office. So with the DrayTek solution, we have solutions that will take you up to 500 VPN tunnels or 500 remote connections coming into a central device. So quite a beefy firewall there for that concentration of remote devices and users coming in. Another really useful feature, very useful for businesses, but particularly appropriate for homes, is the ability to block unsuitable, undesirable or dangerous traffic. So the obvious thing that you point to here is kind of child protection. So using the segmentation facility that I mentioned earlier on, using VLANs, you can, for a particular group of users, apply web content filtering to a category of site. So many of you might be familiar with the ability to block a particular URL on one particular site, but of course there's a whole raft of nasties out there that you may want to block en masse. So using a registration service called Global View, you can invoke child protection web content filtering for an entire bunch of users. So essentially, ticking one box and applying it to one particular type of user will, for example, make all your children accessing the network completely protected. This can be done in a number of different ways. You can block certain sites or certain category of sites for certain types of individuals, and you can also apply that timer to it as well. So it may well be you want to block social media for a certain period of time, and maybe open it up for the maybe opening up at different times of the day. Another option you've got there. So that's another key feature of the business class solution set that DrayTek offer. So just to give you a little bit on products, there's not a chance to go into huge amounts of detail there, but the failover products are what we call the products that support LTE, which is a sort of industry term for 4G cellular technology, so 3G, 4G, 5G, and so on would be associated with LTE. Look for our products that have got an L suffix. So we've got the 2862LN, 2862LAC. So that's our higher end business class product, the L meaning 4G, and the N meaning the wireless that it supports. So we've got wireless N, which is wireless, and you've got wireless AC, which is the latest and greatest, fastest wireless that you can use. And there's also, for those with slightly lower budgets, a 2620LN that's also got these SIM card slots also integrated. So if you like the idea of that 4G failover solution, it's one of those products that's probably the one for you. And then just going more generally into the series, the Vica 2862 is our flagship business class product. Many small to medium sized businesses use these, and increasingly home users are using this as it gives you so much more. For those with a slightly lower budget, we have the 2762 series. Main sort of thing to be aware of there, it just has a single wide area network connection, and it's slightly lower, and it's VLAN and VPN capability, so just be aware of that. And if you want, you know, a really good lower cost LTE solution or 4G solution, maybe the 2620 is the solution for you. So that's just a bit of an overview of the router products that we offer. Fortunately, we're not an organisation that confuses with a huge choice. So it's basically, if you want the thing that does everything, probably go for the 2862. If you're on a little bit more of a budget and don't need all of those advanced features, you can consider one of those two products as well. So just to summarise, why would I want to upgrade my free router I get from my ISP for something from DrayTek? Well, here's a bunch of reasons. First of all, you've got a really good, high quality, critically acclaimed product that's all designed and made by DrayTek. You've got the capability for broadband failover to keep you connected when the connection lets you down. You've got all that traffic prioritization to make sure that when you've got lots of people competing for the internet, the right traffic gets through with the highest priority. VPN for that secure encrypted connection to HQ, and web content filtering for child protection and security. So there's 5 top reasons why you might want to consider a business class router from DrayTek, but this is really just scratching the surface. There is an awful lot more there, so I'd really encourage you to have a look at our website and get more information on that as you feel fit. Okay, so having just touched on DrayTek routers, we're now going to move on to Wi-Fi and the challenges for home. Excuse me. So where do we kind of start on this? So clearly trying to get Wi-Fi in a home is a challenge. Most of us have faced these at one stage or another. And the key thing is, of course, that homes aren't really built for business use. They never really were. Lots of rooms, lots of different materials used to build the walls, which can all kind of affect things. We've got places we may want to get Wi-Fi because we've got new ideas for offices, maybe in attics or out in the garden or outbuildings. Wi-Fi is clearly very, very common throughout neighbourhoods. So particularly in housing estates and more built up areas, flats and so on, there can be huge amounts of interference from your neighbour's Wi-Fi. If you just go on your smartphone or go onto your computer and try and connect to a Wi-Fi network now, you've seen lots and lots and lots of different types of networks you could potentially connect to. All these kind of can create a bit of a nightmare in terms of interference, which can be a problem. So quite a bit to contend with and setting up Wi-Fi for home. And of course, we're all busy people. We don't want to read huge amounts of manuals or be an expert in something. We want something that's very, very easy to install and can get us going really, really quickly. So hopefully I can show you now how a DrayTek solution can help address these types of issues that you're typically going to face. So the first thing to say is that for most of us, the Wi-Fi wireless router that we might put in maybe won't be sufficient for our needs. And so to take Wi-Fi throughout the house, we need to use wireless devices, which are called access points. And I'm just going to feature 3 key access points that may be useful to you all. So the first one is a relatively new access point called the AP802. You can see here that it's got actually can't quite see, but hopefully if you look very carefully, you can see there's a 3-pin plug behind this. So the idea behind this is you can just take this and plug it into the wall wherever there's power, anywhere in the house. Really totally brilliant for figuring out where you need Wi-Fi in the house. Sometimes it's not immediately obvious. Even looking at a schematic diagram, it's not immediately obvious exactly where you're going to need to put access point devices to make sure you maximize the coverage. This is a really, really good solution for that. So, because you take the device, there's no aerial sticking out of it, you're not going to cable it in, you put it in the plug socket, so once you've done that, you've not really got to worry about power. And you can plug it in and take it out, plug it in and take it out, and put several around. And really, with some trial and error, you can quickly find out where the optimum place is to use these access points. So these are really, really quick and easy way of getting Wi-Fi to all different parts of the house that you need. So definitely recommend you take a look at that. The other one is a more traditional wall-mounted device. You must have seen this or something that looks similar to this, where you've got something that attaches to the wall. It's got aerial sticking out of it. These are really, really good where you want to use a small amount of access points for maximizing the coverage. We know that many B&Bs and care homes use this type of solution set because whilst it may not look the most attractive thing sticking on a wall in your home, it really does make fantastic coverage throughout the entire location. It's got a built-in switch as well, which might be quite handy if you've got maybe an office in your home. You may want to put that in the wall of your office. That Wi-Fi is throughout the building and you can connect specific devices to it. And the final one in this sort of series is the AP912C, which is a ceiling mounted device, which looks a little bit like a smoke alarm, so a little bit covert in its look. The great thing about the DrayTek product set is you can mix and match these in one single network, and I'm going to talk about a feature called meshing in a moment, which helps you mesh all these devices together. So 3 different types of access points that all communicate back to your router that can give you really extended Wi-Fi throughout your house. So just to sort of take this a stage further, this whole thing called social distancing is now a thing that's going to affect us all and will affect us for quite some time. It kind of obviously means that we can't be quite as close to each other as we used to be able to. And this affects retail, it affects schools, it affects offices, restaurants and so on. It's a major, major challenge. So for offices and homes, it's sort of kind of indoors, this might cause us to move desks apart and maybe take full use of all the buildings to make sure there's good distance between everybody, which might force us to think about, cabling and Wi-Fi and how do we kind of do this in a more effective way. And also you've got the full usage of outdoors as well, and many individuals are now using outbuildings and certainly want to have a much longer range for Wi-Fi that permeates outside as well as inside. So we've got two different product sets that might be of interest here. One is the Viger AP1000. This is a ceiling mounted or wall mounted device. And the key thing that does, it gives you the capability to connect far more users. So this is ideal for places like schools, or maybe areas where there's lots and lots of people competing for that Wi-Fi. So it's a higher end product used for high density. And we have an external ruggedized device called the AP918. This you can use just simply sticking on the outside of your house or building to provide Wi-Fi to anybody that might be out there. You can also use this in point-to-point mode. I think the distance is well over a kilometre on this. You basically need line of sight, so obviously nothing breaking the view between one access point and another. But this is really, really handy for connecting two buildings together on the same network where you've got line of sight. So up to a kilometre or more. So very, very effective. Brilliant for schools, outbuildings, and other type of campus environments. So there, in a nutshell, is a kind of an overview of the range of access points you can use to provide Wi-Fi to all those different areas. So I'm now going to talk about the simplicity of connecting all these devices together. So traditionally, the way you would connect a wireless network together is you'd cable all the access points up. So you'd run an Ethernet cable from a switch that connects to an access point, and that access point could be on the side of the wall, or could be on the ceiling. And that can be sometimes a bit difficult to do because you've got to lay cable all over the place. It can be expensive to do if you've got to get people in to do it, or tie up a valuable weekend doing this type of thing. And it can be a little bit tricky when you've got to move things around. If you have the grand plan and you've got it all cabled up, and then suddenly you realise there's another part of the house that needs a bit more Wi-Fi, you ought to move things around. It can be a bit of a problematical thing to do. So the neat solution to this is something called meshing, this mesh feature. This essentially means you can use access points, but you don't need to cable them up, making it very simple to do and giving you huge amounts of flexibility in moving access points around as and when you need to. So the mesh solution we have is something we called auto-optimizing and self-healing. So the concept of this is you've got a master access point or a master router, which we call the mesh route. And you've got a number of different sort of slave devices, which we call mesh nodes, that all connect wirelessly back to that mesh route. And it effectively means once you've set this up, you can have a number of access points around the building that all become one virtual network. Self-healing and auto-optimizing, it kind of means that it'll find the most effective route and the fastest speed to get a user back onto the internet, and it will self-heal. So if you switch an access point off or pull it out or something, the network will work things out around that to make sure you've got that connection. And it avoids running all that Cat6 cabling, which should be hugely beneficial. And for those of you a little bit more technical, I've just shown how you can typically set this up. So in this environment here, you've got our mesh route, which is, if you like, the controller access point. And off that controller access point, wirelessly, you can connect up to 7 different access points. And you've got a concept of hops as well. So if you look at the far right there, you've got 1 hop, 2 hop, and 3 hops away from that that mesh route. So for most buildings, for most offices, and for most individuals at home, this is by far going to cover enough space, enough coverage for all your particular needs there. So key thing to note there, you buy one of our, or a group of our DrayTek access points. You can have up to 8 of them in this wireless mesh environment, all sharing the same common network and very simple setup. Again, not time to go this in great depth today, but essentially you can use a simple app you download on your smartphone. You can connect this to your mesh route on the far left, and then it will auto sense all the other access points you have in your building, and you can then set them up as mesh nodes and set them up in hop 1, hop 2, and really within a few minutes you've got a complete network set up in your home or your business. There's a few tutorial on this. There's links to our website that will show you exactly how to do this, but really straightforward. So just to sort of kind of summarize here, you've got different access points there. We've got some internal access points really for the home and small business. So 802 is that plug device. You've got the 903, which is wall mounted, and the 912C, which is the ceiling mounted. All can be used in this meshing environment. We've got the ruggedized devices, the 918s, which you can put outside, and you've got this AP1000C, which is really for high density environments where there's lots and lots of people competing for usage. So hope you'll agree, a nice comprehensive range there, and straightforward to set up, something you can get up and running pretty quickly. So that's a little bit about the sort of physical challenges of getting access points, connecting them together, and making sure you've got coverage. But what other things do you need to kind of consider? We kind of touched on it earlier, and one of the things is we're talking about family members competing for the network, so we want to make sure we can do that in a nice controlled way. I also touched upon this issue you can sometimes get with Wi-Fi congestion, where there's lots and lots of users of Wi-Fi in your area using different networks that we call these SSIDs that can all come together and create a real kind of congestion nightmare. So we want to make sure the right traffic has the right priority. We want to make use of all the technology available, and we want to avoid all that congestion. So how can we do that with a DrayTek solution? Well, the first thing we can look at is segmenting traffic. We can segment traffic using something that we call SSIDs. So these are different network names that can be individually connected to. So we recommend for most organizations and most families that you have two different networks. Now, many of you at work will be familiar with the concept of the sort of the guest network and the office network. You know, people that work for the company get the high speed office network, people that come in as guests get the lower speed guest network. And you can sort of apply the same logic to a home. So we recommend something called My Home Family as one SSID and My Home Work as a different SSID. So the My Home Work using VLAN and traffic prioritization might get the fastest and best connection to the internet. My Home Family may get a slightly lesser service. And you can also take this a stage further. There's not time to go in this in great depth today, but there are different types of Wi-Fi. There's 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi. 2.4 travels the furthest, but is a slower speed. 5 gigahertz doesn't travel quite so far, but is actually really fast and less prone to interference. So you may well find that a combination of My Home Family, and My Home Work with 2.4 and 5.0 gigahertz might be the right sort of combination. So use a combination of those four SSIDs, mix and match to get the most out of your network. Okay, not time to get into it in too much depth today, but hopefully shows you the principle how you can set that up to maximize speed and lack of interference. So if you want Wi-Fi everywhere and you want to reduce Wi-Fi interference, use the 5 gigahertz, use multiple access points, and you won't go far wrong. So a few other DrayTek features to consider. Roaming is a key feature. So this is the ability for someone to come into the environment, connect to one particular access point, and then move around the environment, connecting to different access points as you go. So I connect to one access point. As I move away, the signal weakens on the access point I originally connected to, but strengthens on one I'm going towards. The roaming feature will disconnect you from one and connect you to the other without you losing connection. Again, there'll be links to this afterwards. There's a nice matrix there which will show you the speeds and feeds and features of all the devices. You can see on wireless one, it shows you the speed of the 2.4 and 5 gigahertz connections, and you can see in terms of megabits the speed. So if you're going for the AC product, you can see 806 megabits is possible with that type of solution set. In the vast majority of cases, your internet connection is going to be the bottleneck. So not often the Wi-Fi is a huge consideration there, but you probably want to get the bestest and greatest. So those are the ones to kind of go for. Just a little bit on VLANs. Again, we're just dipping a little bit technically here. We've already talked about the concept of the guest network and the internal network. The same thing will maybe apply for a home where you've got the work network and the home network. You can see here with the VLAN sessions set up, you can have it like an internal and a guest network. Here is a kind of metric stream you get to set things up. And if you look here, if you're looking at the main connection for work or the main connection internally, the sort of P1, P2, P3 and P4 is the actual physical connections on the router. So those are the switch connections. SSID1 would be the high priority work network. So everybody that connects to that work network gets the high priority. And then we've got maybe the guests or my home family connect to that second VLAN, which just connects you to the Wi-Fi. And you can see here that if somebody on that network tries to connect to a LAN port, they effectively won't get connected. So not time to cover it in huge depth today, but there's a full and comprehensive VLAN capability within the router and also within the switch that you might use. Okay, so that's now the wireless solution. We're now going to move on to wired challenges, and some people ask, well, why are we worrying about wires and cables when we got Wi-Fi everywhere? Why on earth would you do that? Well, actually, there's some good reasons why you might do that. So a general rule of thumb is that if you want the fastest possible connection in a network, you're probably most likely to get that from a wired connection. So if you want the fastest, only high speed will do, cable it all up. This might be classic for if you've got a gamer in the house, for example, that always wants the fastest and greatest. Maybe not the hugest inconvenience just to lay an Ethernet cable between the router and that particular individual. So, we would say wired for the best speed and wireless convenience is not a bad rule of thumb. Also, if you've got devices that are quite close to your router, a couple of feet away, well, don't mess around with Wi-Fi, just stick a cable there. It's going to give you the fastest speed and it won't interfere with the Wi-Fi network. So that might be another reason why you want to use cabling. And the third reason is where you may struggle to get traditional power to device. So you can see there, you've got a camera stuck on an outside wall there, or you might have an access point stuck on an outside wall. There may not be a plug to plug the thing in nearby. And if you're using a PoE switch or PoE capability, you can power the device using an Ethernet cable, not a traditional power circuit, which might be a really good solution in certain circumstances. So in switches, I'm not going to cover every single one that we do, but just sufficient to say that we do a complete range from an 8-port right the way through to a 50-port. So there's a 12-port device, a 24-port device, and a 50-port device. Probably would associate an 8-port with the home and maybe a 50-port with a larger office. PoE and non-PoE, so this is power over Ethernet. With the right type of switch, you can power a device over that Ethernet cable. We've got high-speed devices right the way up to 10 gigabits now, and we've got different ways of managing depending on the sort of level of sophistication that you want. So comprehensive range, 8 to 50 ports, pretty much all the speeds and feeds and features you'd want. Most of you have seen a switch before. That's what they look like. Devices that have got ports on the front that you can connect devices to. These can be kind of put on a table somewhere, but we often find that people will use a small rack. In fact, many homes will use a small rack under the stairs to house these. Obviously, businesses would more typically use racking for that. And just to show the capability, we're going to use one of our entry-level switches called the P1085, which is our 8-port switch. And just a little bit on when you see a switch name, what does it actually mean? What on earth does that reference number mean? So we're just going to give you a quick tutorial on how it all works. So first of all, we've got the VS, which means Viga switch. The prefix there is going to be a G or a P. A G means gigabit, a P means it's PoE. The first number is either 1, meaning smart managed, or 2, meaning fully managed. The 2 digits in the middle would indicate the number of ports. And the final digit at the end is the iteration, so which one in the range is the switch. And the final piece is either an X or a no X. X means it's 10 gigabit capable, and no X means it's 1 gigabit capable. So to make it very simple, our VSP2280X, you've got a Viga switch P for PoE. The 2 at the front means it's an advanced layer 2 managed switch. 28 in the middle means it's got 28 ports. 0 means it's the first iteration of the switch, and X means it's 10 gigabits capable. So very quick sort of guide to what all these switches actually mean. The typical applications here. This is our 8-port switch used for maybe a small office or a home user. You can see this is a power over Ethernet switch, so it's got PoE. There's a high PoE wattage budget of 240 watts. This basically means that every one of the 8 ports can be used for PoE, should you so wish. This can be used to power a camera, an IP phone, or an access point, or combination thereof. It also can be used to expand the router's ports. That's quite a neat way of bringing extra ports into your organisation. If you go on to products and click switches, you can see the entire range there. So again, I'm not going to go through every one of them there, but you can see each one of these has got different amounts of ports. Some do PoE, some don't. Some are 10 gigs, some aren't. Some are advanced layer 2 and some are layer 3. So you've got a big range there to choose from depending on your particular environment. So just to summarize the key features there, 8 to 50 ports, PoE or non-PoE, all with high budget wattage, which means you can power from every single one of those ports. VLANs for network segmentation, which can be dynamic as well. Again, not time to cover it today, but will automatically identify video or voice and make sure you've got the right prioritization of connection and easy to manage. So just finally, we're going to, before we move on to the management, we're just going to talk a little about the head office. So we talked a lot about for the home and the remote office, but what about HQ? There's going to be perhaps more demands on HQ now with this dispersed workforce, and maybe more robust infrastructure is needed. Now, we do have a range of products for the head office, but the flagship product we have is something called the Viger 2910 firewall. This is a 10 gigabit firewall that will support a number of different high-speed connections, vast array of VLANs, lots of remote users, up to 500 VPN tunnels, and can be used for a multiple WAN connection as well. So typically, and I think there's a bit of an example down here, you might want to use this for broadband failover. So for a head office environment, you may want to have multiple WAN connections coming into the HQ. So maybe 2 high-speed internet connections. Well, with this solution, you can connect up to 4 WAN connections, and this will load balance and fail over. So effectively, it will spread the load equally across multiple connections, and it will also automatically fail all the traffic over to a primary connection or maybe a secondary connection when the primary connection fails. So not time to go into this in great depth today, but suffice to say this is a very powerful central site concentrator up to 10 gigabits that should fulfill the requirements of most small to medium to mid-sized businesses. There are other options as well for smaller HQs. The 2862 is not a bad concentrator as well. 2 or 3 remote sites, 5 remote sites or something like that, you may well find the 2862 does the job admirably. And there's a sort of baby brother of the 3910 called the 2952. Very powerful device, up to 2 WAN connections. There's still a high number of VPN tunnels that may be suitable for perhaps a slightly smaller business. And we're going to finish now really looking at remote management, supporting this new normal where you want to control devices from one interface. Now this could mean you've got 2 or 3 devices, or it could mean you've got thousands of devices, and there are different ways of doing it from a DrayTek perspective. So even for a home, this might be useful. We've talked about routers, we've talked about DrayTek access points and switches. Even if you've only got 2 or 3 devices at home, it still might be a pain to manage if you've got to go and look at the router management for the router, the switch management for the switch, and the access point management for the access point. If you take a DrayTek solution, you can just literally go into the router with its free management software and manage a switch and an access point and a router from that one interface. So that might save you a bit of time. For larger implementations of access points especially, we've got some schools that use this and some larger building complexes where you may have up to 100 access points to manage. We've got a free software download called Viger Connect, which you simply download, and this will enable you to manage a broad spectrum of access points. And the sort of flagship head office large enterprise solution is something called Viger ACS, which will enable you to manage lots of sites, lots of devices across lots and lots of different countries even, or a much dispersed area, called Vica ACS. This is really for our larger enterprise or maybe larger DrayTek systems integrator. And just to give you a kind of view on that, again, not time to go into this in huge depth now, but through the router, you get a nice simple interface there. And this example here, you can see how you can set up different access points, and you can see different access points, set them all up, set their SSIDs up and the passwords and so on. Similarly here, you can see how you can use this with a router, and you've got a nice sort of topological view of the routers that are connected, the switches that are connected to your router. It gives you the name of the switches, it gives you the ports that are being used. You can set things up, turn ports off, turn them on, set up your VLANs and so on as you see fit. This is just on the slide coming up now, a simple view of our Vica Connect. The free software download, you can discover lots of access points. You can provision configurations, so you may want to set up an SSID for 90 access points and not do it 90 times. Using the Vica Connect, you can set it up once and then deploy it to all those devices. Really, it's a touch of a button. So really simple to use. You can monitor your network, you can see what's going on, you can do simple maintenance. Really neat, low-cost way of managing a large dispersed network. And the final network management tool, this is a long webinar in its own right. In fact, some of you may have come on this. We've got 3 introductory webinars into this solution, but this is a cloud-based network management solution supporting multiple sites across all the Vica, all the DrayTek devices that are available from DrayTek. You can provision devices remotely. You can support them remotely, you can troubleshoot, you can set things up remotely, deploy solution sets in a very easy way. Huge amounts of facilities that are available on this particular thing, really used by large organizations and large systems integrators to significantly reduce the cost and hassle associated with rolling out large deployments and troubleshooting, and avoiding all those man visits that can really tie individuals and businesses up. So to summarise, take a deep breath now about what we're talking about now. So for the new normal, it's all how can we work and play at home? How can we make things much easier for businesses and home workers? Well, we can incorporate solutions that have business class networking, and hopefully I've shown you what that business class is today. Reliable, robust and comprehensive Wi-Fi coverage, all that traffic prioritization to make sure the right individuals get the right speed and the right content, high security with VPN, high internet speeds, getting the maximum you possibly can for it with reliability and consistency. And we talked about the different solution sets here. So to summarize, we've got our complete range of routers, the 2862, 2762 range for the remote site. We've got a range of high-speed firewalls to concentrate all those remote workers and remote sites coming to that central point. I pressed the wrong button there, my apologies. So we're just coming on to access points now. So we've got a comprehensive range of access points from the plug-based device that's very easy to deploy in a home, to the wall-mounted, to the ceiling-mounted, to the high concentration, lots and lots of devices, right the way through to ruggedized, all using this clever mesh technology that kind of blends it all together in a really highly effective way. Pardon me, I pressed the wrong button again. Then we got the switches for high speed and power that can be used in a whole plethora of ways, whether that's we want to extend the amount of LAN ports, whether we want to provide PoE to the different devices that we've spoken about today. And then finally, we've got this way to manage the whole lot together. We've got the free router management that comes with the router for very small mounted devices that you want to locally manage. We've got the Vica Connect, that's that free download for especially large deployments of wireless, but can also be used for switches as well. And for the full 9 yards, we've got that Viger ACS, which is available for very, very large implementations across multiple sites. And just to sort of summarize here, there's lots of resources you can use to find out about this webinar later on. We've got this webinar will be recorded. It will be available on the draytek.co.uk website. This is just available to everybody, but we'll be providing you a link afterwards for everybody that attended this webinar that give you links to the comparison charts, all the product information, remote access stuff. There's a really good dealer portal for dealers that want to resell and get associated with the brand. And as I say, you'll all receive that email shortly afterwards. And just a bit of advertisement for an up-and-coming webinar. This is available to our dealers. We've got a DrayTek Wi-Fi and Mesh Wi-Fi Solutions webinar coming up. This is going to do a much deeper dive into that Wi-Fi technology to assist on how do you scope out a Wi-Fi opportunity, how do you select the right devices for that, and how can we assist you in terms of doing site surveys and so on. Again, we'll provide you a link to this, and that's something that we recommend that you may want to join on the 22nd of July and Wednesday the 22nd of July. So I'm pretty much out of puff now, so I'm going to, I think, hand over to Alex, I believe, is going to join us now, where we're going to do, I think, some questions that I think somebody or some of you may have asked during the course of this particular webinar. So I think Alex might join us now. Alex, I think
hello.
Yeah, hey, how you doing? All right?
Yeah, good. Thank you. Yes, we got lots of questions during the webinar, Gillian, which was great. So we've answered a lot of them directly
okay, cool.
on the text, but we've got some we think are quite interesting that we'll can ask now. The first question was about the webinar and will it be available for download. So you answered that very, very nicely in your summary slide, which is fantastic. The next question I'd like to ask is about how do people trial Viger ACS? Is there a trial that people can take up?
Yeah, absolutely. So number of options here. If you want to give it a go, we do offer a free 30-day trial on Viger ACS. If you contact us, so if you contact your reseller can assist you doing that. If you're a reseller, we can avail you of a free trial as well that will help you provide that to your customers as well. So there's very much a sort of a try-buy type philosophy with Viger ACS. For those that you do take it on, it's not a hugely expensive device, a hugely expensive service to take on. I think it's around about £8 per device per year for our full premium service, and it's much lower cost than that for small amounts of devices. So definitely would encourage you to take advantage of that one, and please do contact us if you want to do that.
Thank you. And there's a lot of technical questions now, which we'll go into some of them. We can't cover everything, and there have been, I think, almost hundreds of questions of different technical, which we've been replying to everyone directly. If you don't get a reply, then you can expect to just receive a little email note with an answer to your question at some point later. But now let's just go over some of the questions that have been asked that I think would be good to cover now. So cool. The first question is regarding some stuff earlier on in the presentation to do with VPN. So if you have the question is, if you've got a VPN tunnel and your backup connection is on 4G, the question is, will you still be able to create a VPN tunnel over the 4G?
Good question.
And, I think I can answer that, Gillian. So the answer is it is possible. It is important to consider the scenario, but yes, you can configure the router to have a VPN functioning successfully with, say, IPsec or SSL VPN over 4G. Most 4G connections use something called carrier grade NAT, so it means that the connection is actually NATed. That means that if you do have this scenario, you generally need the router to be in a dial out configuration, so it will be the device dialing out rather than receiving connections. So that's the general kind of configuration you need to set it to dial out, but you can set up. If you have any kind of further questions, it's good to maybe check with our support, and we can run through things in detail, because there's some other things you can do relating to the security. But broadly speaking, yes, you can have that. And another way of doing this is you can have a 4G connection that has a VPN tunnel that only comes up when the 4G connection is established. And this is quite useful for people who have a non-NAT primary WAN connection, which is a private network. And when they go onto the 4G, which is the public internet connection, how do they then have their private network circulating? The answer is you have 4G that only comes up on your backup connection, and that can be configured using route policies so that you can control whether or not traffic routes down the VPN tunnel or out via the primary WAN connection. But if you've got any questions on that in detail, then just contact our support and we'd be happy to go into detail with you.
Is there a knowledge-based article on that, Alex? That
yes, there is. In the support section. There's
sure.
Some stuff in detail about how to make the best use of the route policy functions on the DrayTek products. They're really flexible and allow you to achieve lots of different scenarios.
Cool.
The next question I've got on my list here is about 5G. Will DrayTek release any 5G products in the future? And the answer to that, yes, we do have 5G products planned. We don't have anything announced yet, but they will be in due course. So you can expect kind of a full range of routers that are able to utilize 5G in the future, but it's not something that we currently have in the product range. And another question again about failover. If a router failover to 4G, can it be configured to then fail back to the primary WAN? And the answer to that is yes, you can, or you cannot. It depends on how you configure the route policy. You can choose the behavior. So you can choose whether or not to have it to fail back automatically, or whether or not it should wait for existing sessions to have finished before failing back, or whether or not it should just permanently stay on the alternative connection until some sort of manual intervention takes place. So you kind of have the flexibility of how to control that. And another question is about the sort of speeds that can be configured using the wireless as a WAN interface. Earlier on in the presentation, Julian, you explained how the wireless interface on a DrayTek product can be used as an alternative WAN interface, so that you're piggybacking off someone else's wireless connection. And a question is about what sort of speeds could be expected on that. So the answer to that is it greatly depends on the signal strength and also the number of clients that are connected to the other access point. But we've seen speeds of over 50 megabits per second. If you're tethering to something like your phone and you're controlling how many other clients are connected to that phone, then you've got a much greater control over the number of other clients using the connection. So you can then have a greater guarantee of what sort of speeds you're going to get. Whereas if you're connecting to another AP that's maybe not in your control, or where there's many other clients connecting to it, then it can be affected by the number of clients using that wireless connection. But it's something that we've seen does deliver a pretty useful connection if it's something that's needed. And another question here is about 4G failover. If you don't quite have a good signal in the place where the routers are placed, and if there anything you can do about improving the signal to the device. And the answer to that is that we have a couple of options. You've got extension cables that are provided with the products. It's normally kind of like a 1 meter cable that you can move around and put it in a better position. But as an alternative, you can actually use one of the optional external antennas. There's a product called the ANT 4GE1, which is a external antenna, and it has an optional 5 meter cable you can use with that, and then you could mount that on a wall outside and then run it through to where you've got the router. And then another way of doing this is to use the Vigor 2620 LN as an LTE bridge. What you do is put the 2620 LN somewhere near the window, and then maybe run an Ethernet cable from it to your router that's maybe in the comms cabinet, and then the 2620 can be configured into a bridge mode, so that it's sort of acting like a modem, where it's providing the main router, the WAN IP, and just offering the LTE connection, which is a really handy way of getting over situations where you physically can't get signal to a cabinet that's somewhere in the depth of a building.
Yeah, I've also noticed that if you look at the 4G signal on your phone, for example, and see the sort of typical speed you can get on that, if you compare that to one of those areas we supply with the routers alongside it, it really does boost the signal and give you a much better connection. Really worth having a look at that.
Yeah, yeah, it's quite a good option because although you do lose signal strength as you have a longer cable, often you gain more from the better aerial than you do from the extra loss of the cable
Yeah.
assembly of the wider of the.
So Alex, I'm just sort of conscious of time. We did advertise this webinar as an hour. I think I did 48 minutes. I think so. I slightly went over 45. But maybe we just have a couple of questions to summarise, just wary of people's busy days. That's all.
Okay, maybe I've got one more question here, which is to do with VPN, which is a question about the Smart VPN client that you demonstrated. The question is, why use the Smart VPN client over the built-in kind of Windows 10
Sure.
VPN? And the answer to that is that the Smart VPN client makes it quite easy to configure, and additionally supports the DrayTek SSL VPN. So this is DrayTek proprietary, so requires the DrayTek VPN client, which we've got versions available for kind of Mac OS and on the Google Store. And also the Windows Smart VPN client supports two-factor authentication and the ability to send all traffic or just some traffic via the VPN. You can optionally configure routes, so you get to control how much traffic, whether you want to send all your traffic when the VPN's up through the VPN tunnel, or just some traffic. So it makes it easier to configure those sort of things using the built-in one. So hopefully that answered that question on the VPN client. So I think that's all the questions we've got for now. We have had many other questions on the chat, but as I said, we'll hopefully have answered most of those during. But if not, then you'll receive an email with an answer to your question later on today. So you expect to see that from info@draytek.co.uk.
Thank you very much indeed. It's very good. Well, thank you very much for spending time on your busy day to join us today. I hope you find that very useful. You've got a better view of what we do and how we can help you and how this might be relevant to the emerging world that we see coming out of lockdown. So thank you very much for your time. We really do appreciate that. And we hope to see you at some stage in the future on a future webinar. And you have a great day, and please do keep safe. And bye for now.